Hey guys, welcome on out to another exciting interview with Mr. Geoff Keighley.
Hello.
I'm Chris Young with Ayzenberg Group. Jeff here with the Game Awards.
Yes.
I'm going to celebrate that event today.
Well, okay. Well, I'm into that. I'm excited.
So what's exciting about in terms of AList is we've got about 100,000 uniques coming in every month to the daily, and more than probably about half of those represent consumer brands beyond just gaming. So I think there's an actual interesting story that's been going on around gaming. I think the event you put forth and the platform by which I think the audience we're trying to reach to. So when it comes to the Game Awards, we've gone to our share of events.
Yes.
Right? We've done a lot of these. So why this one? What's going on with the Game Awards?
Well,
because what's the third into it?
Yeah, this will be the third Game Awards.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, I started writing about games when I was like 13 years old. I was the kid traveling around going to id Software when they first created Doom in like 1993 and things like that. And the thing that always amazed me when I got to meet these game creators is that they weren't as well known as a lot of traditional creatives in the film, TV, or music business. So for a long time I worked as a journalist trying to tell the stories of these creators and sort of get them out there and put them on the same pedestal as a lot of other great creatives. And there was never really a great award show for games. And
There hasn't been.
No, and I worked on the first ever Game Award show, something called Cybermania '94. I was like 15 years old or something. Hosted by Jonathan Taylor Thomas from Home Improvement and the late Leslie Nielsen.
Beautiful.
And that was really, and I worked on that. It was like 20 plus years ago.
That's cool.
And I worked for many years at Spike TV, working on the Video Game Awards there.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found was that there was never really that show that could be the Oscars for this industry, and our industry needs something like that.
Now, that's not just your words. I think the New York Times actually said the Oscars of the awards. So that's
we were honored. They said that last year. Yeah,
and we're coming out of the hype of award shows just this last week, so that's kind of cool. But with this show, right, there's a lot of factors that go into this.
Yeah.
But your structure, your spine, it's something interesting in terms of how the show's brought to you that actually I think is starting to deliver something that this industry has missed for so long. Are you talking about the format of this?
Yeah, so I'd done television work for over a decade, and 3 or 4 years ago, I began to see this shift for millennial audiences to consume all their video content really on digital platforms. So when I was thinking about creating something like the Game Awards, one path was to go back to television, but I said maybe there's something new or interesting to do here with creating an all-digital show across all digital screens. So the idea was to create a show that still had the same production values as a big television show, but was distributed exclusively on YouTube and Twitch and Xbox and PlayStation and Steam and Snapchat and all these other digital screens. And it just felt natural. Like, why, if you're trying to reach gamers and celebrate gaming awards, why are you going to force them to go to cable? Like, they're all playing on a screen. So it's like, why not put the show on the screen where they play a game, whether it's their phone or their console or their computer screen. So that's what we did. And I said, let's put the show across 600 million gaming screens around the world. And it doesn't have the same restrictions of television in terms of, you can only watch it in America. When I was doing shows on Spike, it was only in America. It's like, this is a truly global show as well.
China included?
Yeah, China, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to do, we'll be live in China.
Yeah. The 600 million gaming screens, that's a pretty impressive number, actually. So there is something, though, on top of that, right, that the shows I've watched as you continue to evolve it, there is this, there's you, right, as a host. I think there's a level of authenticity there, right, that you're bringing that isn't just, I like the entertainment value there, but there's also something true in terms of the way, it's not just awards, right? There is events, there is competition, there is
a lot of news.
Awards, right?
Yeah, the thing that
world premieres, perhaps.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's the thing that I separates this show is that even though it's called the Game Awards, it really is a show that half looks back at the year in gaming and half of it really looks forward, right? Like E3, and that's what really drives the audience that we see. 7 million plus people tune in, not just for the awards, but because they want to see the new trailer for the next game from Creator X or Creator Y. This is a show where a lot of the game companies come and deliver news, and we're gamers. We know that this audience really wants to be sort of marketed to about what's next in the industry, and December is a great time to sort of look back and also say, hey, here are the 10 games that are going to come out next year that are the state of our art, and we're going to show them to you at the show. So you're right, it's awards, it's world premieres, we do a lot of cool stuff with music, trying to kind of have musicians come to our stage to celebrate their love of games. We've done things like Imagine Dragons performing music from The Legend of Zelda because they were fans, stuff that you would only see at our show. And then bringing esports into the mix as well. So we try and do a lot more than just awards in the show.
So most of our audience are brands and marketers, people looking to innovate, better their craft, reach the audience. A lot of the audience, millennial makeup. You talked about the streaming aspect of the choice you made for the award show. What's the benefits that offer that? Because there's kind of a non-linear nature to it, but yet creates a whole nother layer of opportunity for brands to be interactive that isn't just reduced to a 30-second type of speech,
that was the whole, the liberating aspect of it is when we created this all digital property, it meant that we could sort of really work directly with brands to come up with what we call kind of integrated content into the show. So, even though we can work with brands to place in a traditional 30-second spot in the show, almost everyone says, no, we want to work with you to sort of figure out what can we do in this space that's going to resonate and be authentic with this audience. And that's one thing that you and I both know, having done this for so many years, is when brands come into the gaming space, they really have to understand it and they have to find an interesting angle, because I think gamers naturally are a little reticent to anyone sort of coming into the gaming space that doesn't understand it. So you really have to sort of,
Is there some brands that have done it well? Is there some that
some
good partners in the past?
Yeah, we've had an amazing partnership with a bunch of brands. I mean, we've worked with Taco Bell, Bud Light, Verizon, AMD, the technology company. They've all been involved in past Game Awards. And what's great is that they really want to sit down with us. Like Verizon was our title sponsor last year for their new video platform, Go90, and they literally sat down and said, hey, what have you always wanted to do with this show that you haven't been able to achieve? We want to help enable that. And they're looking at me as a independent creator, which in some ways is, insane that I'm, running this independent multi-million-dollar award show, but brands trust us to sort of, work with them. And as you said, it's non-linear in that this show, it's not just about the 2-hour stream, it's about all the social that's around it. We did a live story with Snapchat last year from the show, and it had as many viewers on Snapchat as the traditional regular broadcast. And what I keep trying to tell brands is it's not about just what you're doing in the show and your integration, it's how you're amplifying that on social. How are you looking to do something interesting around your messaging on Snapchat? What do you do on the game consoles? And it's no longer just sort of like, it's round, peg in round hole. It's like, how do you sort of think of different ways on all our different platforms to reach the audience? Because it's very different audiences and people consume stuff in different ways.
There is a non-endemic quality that brands can reach an audience that even though they may not be perceived as a gaming brand, they can be part of the experience because you can engage a dialogue, you can have an immersive experience, it doesn't have to be static. I think most of the elements we've been reporting on an AList daily recently have been around the different platforms, whether it's the live streaming now within Twitter's features, whether it's Facebook Live and the APIs being built in gaming. There's so many ways that are going on with different social channels, and not any one rules them all.
And that's what's great about this show is the way it's set up is that we are platform agnostic. We're across all devices and all systems. So this is not a show that's only on Twitch or only on YouTube or only on Xbox. We run the gamut across kind of all live stream platforms. It's like if there's sort of a platform out there, we're willing to experiment with it. Even this we're going to do the show. We haven't talked much about this, but we're going to do the show live in virtual reality across all the headsets. So the idea there is that you're going to be able to sit there, watch the show live with a separate production that will give you kind of full.
I can step out of my unvirtual life and go to a virtual,
go into an even virtual experience.
Where
you do fun things like sit in the front row of the theater next to a really special guest and hear their commentary, so you're watching the show next to that person. Cool. And that's the kind of stuff that we are free to do with this show. And when I was doing traditional television shows, there's so many restrictions around like geo-blocking the content or carriage restrictions. You can't stream this online. You look at like the MTV Video Music Awards, massive on social, but you can't actually watch the show live because of the cable carriage agreement. So I see all these stories in the news about this award show, that award show, lowest ratings ever, and it's like you just sort of hear this, but that's because it's traditional television. And I'm so glad that we can write the next chapter of building a show like this and honestly experiment with brands. And that's the thing that I think has been really encouraging, is that when you sit down with the brands, they say, we don't know what to do here, help us. And I don't necessarily have all the metrics nailed, exactly how we're going to measure this, and what's engagement, what's not, but like, let's partner and let's try and figure this out together, because this is where it's going, whether people like it or not. This is the future of where media and consumption is going to go, especially for this audience.
Yeah, there's definitely more of a lean in than a passive kind of viewership.
1,000%, and that's what's great, is everyone's on a digital screen. So when you're watching this show, I always tell brands, it's like, let's find ways to interact. Let's not just look at the raw impressions of the show. Let's look at, like, what are people actually able to do? So do they go to a website to redeem something? Is there special content that you can unlock by doing something? Because these are, you said, are lean forward gamers who are looking to do things, interact with things. So,
might be able to help you on the measurement. One of our studies we do right now is an earned media value index. So I'll float that your way. But for brands as well, that's an index published quarterly that you're able to get access and give value to. So if anything, there's more than just a view out there that gets value for people, and I think you guys have a lot there. So one last thing I want to get into real quick is when you're talking to brands and they're talking about shows and being recognized and being integrated, talking to audience, within gaming right now, what is the one thing that probably is Geoff, I'm most interested in this part of your programming or this part of the show, or I want to be involved in this set because this just seems to be the hottest thing right now. Is there something that's indexing the most?
Yeah, I would say this year, absolutely, it's all the esports stuff. So we started with Best Esports Player and Team as an award on our first show in 2014. Nade shot the big Call of Duty Player won the first year. And it was interesting because, traditionally when I did award shows, we were only recognizing the game developers, and this was the first time we were recognizing the players. So that was big when we did it 2 years ago. Now, I mean, every brand out there, I think, wants to understand the esports space. And, part of what I do throughout the year is literally cold call brands and say, hey, are you interested in gaming? And often in the past, it'd be like,
you're interested in gaming.
That's okay. Well, and part of it is like, we want to, I feel sort of I'm an evangelist for the industry. I want to talk to these brands like, hey, there's stuff you should be doing here. Expose yourself to it. And what's been great about esports is that a lot of the big brands that are in traditional sports, like a Bud Light, haven't really ever figured out how to get into gaming in the past, but esports feels like a step closer to what they know from the sports world, so they're willing to explore that. So yeah, a lot of the non-endemic brands especially are interested in esports. How do we get around that? What can we do? And I mean, you see, the viewership around a lot of these big tournaments. And one of the things that I think a lot of brands find frustrating with esports is that some of the big game companies aren't that keen to involve brands because they want to own sort of, vertically integrate. They want to own the experience. So something like Game Awards is a great way to sort of partner with a brand, recognize the best esports talent, and do it in an agnostic way. So you're not picking one game to bet on. It's like we're involved in kind of all the games and all the players.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of teams. It's funny, the marketplace for esports, there's 4 or 5 main subject pillars. But the teams at the core is probably the last thing to be figured out, and how they represent. When I think of NASCAR and the team structure and the branding structure and the business model they have around brand integration and relationship with their audience that are rabid fans, there are some qualities that are shared there. And yet figuring out how these teams interact and have the brand behavior or the audience behavior to interact with their brands is quite unique. And I think you're really at the edge of that right now, and that's a big deal. It's actually, for you, it's your third. And I think for us, it's our 14th summit we're doing in February, which is going to be dedicated just to esports.
I think I might have been there at the first one.
You might have keynoted the first one. So this is in LA. So more information will be coming out on the next summit for esports. But your event as well it's downtown, right?
It'll be downtown LA on December 1st. And we're it's a 2-hour live show, but it sort of becomes a whole experience. And the thing I would say to people watching this or interested in the space, it's like, just come out, experience the show. And one of the great things about our show is that it's a live event, and so much of our industry is virtual. And you really need, sort of like you need to go to, sit in the Staples Center at the League of Legends Worlds and feel it. Same with the Game Awards. It's like, come experience the energy of this community. And when we have brands come out, they always are like blown away. They're like, wow, this is, the same stage where they just did the Emmys. Like, you're doing the Game Awards.
I got to be quite honest. I don't, your pedigree and what you've done in the industry for years, this is going to continue to grow and develop. I find that most brands that actually engage and innovate early, the risk really is in the actual lack of engagement, lack of participation. So even when I look at things like PAX South, those that took advantage of it first really paid dividends for them. So I think in the chapter you're in and the opportunities for brands, what I've noticed is, and the clients we work with for sure as well, and on the A-list side, it is something to be considered and take seriously, because you are offering something innovative and different than just the other layers that are in there. So
we're here to experiment. Thank you. And that's part of the thing is, with a lot of these brands, is like, look at your innovation budget and say, hey, let's start to experiment and understand this space. And that's what we're willing to do. We're just sort of not there to kind of say, slap your logo on and be a sponsor. This is like, how can we help you understand this marketplace, do something, and I'm building the Game Awards so it's around for the rest of my life and well beyond that.
You're the
and
Descartes production. But
that's thing is 10 years from now, who knows where the space is going to be, but I love that we can explore and innovate, and I want to find those partners that are not just with us for 1 year, that can build over time and grow with it. So it's a really exciting space to be in, because it feels like this is what's next, and a lot of the brands you talk to say, we know we should be doing something here, we just we don't know quite what to do. And even when I read the A-list, it's always fascinating. You guys get great interviews with a lot of these marketing executives, and the common theme I find is they're always like, hey, we want to explore this space. We want to think about kind of what we should be doing here, because clearly some of our audience is is in this demographic, and we need to reach them.
Yeah, they say education is the longest part of the sales cycle, and thank you today for educating us.
Oh, thank
so
you,
hopefully now they can move quickly into the journey. And I appreciate your time. If anyone wants to get a hold of you, just on Twitter at Geoff Keighley.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, handle.
I'm around.
And if there's any other questions of the day or your team, put some comments below. And thank you guys, and appreciate you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate it. Thanks.